Hello and welcome to this podcast, How to Analyze Stress from Heart Rate Variability. My name is Tiina Hoffman. I'm a master trainer at Firstbeat, and I'm going to be covering the theoretical background behind the Firstbeat analytics. A little bit of terminology to get started with. Heart rate means the heartbeat frequency as beats per minute. How many times your heart beats in a minute? That's a value that's usually quite familiar to people. Then heartbeat or RR interval means the time between consecutive heartbeats, consecutive R waves, as seen from the ECG graph from here. It's measured in milliseconds, and from that we can analyze heart rate variability or HRV, which means the beat-to-beat variation in the time between consecutive RR intervals. How much this time varies from one beat to the next. As we know, the heart normally does not tick like a metronome on an even level, but the millisecond values from beat to beat vary significantly, and that's a sign of a good, healthy heart. Device records every beat during the time that the person is wearing it, and then calculates the time between beats in milliseconds. And also the measurement device Bodyguard has a built-in accelerometer that detects movement that we use in our algorithms. Then after the measurement, the data is uploaded from the Bodyguard to the analysis program, and it's analyzed and processed to estimate, for example, respiration frequency, oxygen uptake, energy expenditure, training effect, and then utilizing this information also recovery and stress. More about the analytics process and the background can be read, for example, in our white paper that you can find on the science section of our website. But the basic idea of us is that we use the heart rate variability information, the detailed high quality heartbeat data, and then convert that into different physiological states that in the client report then look like something like this example here. Red meaning stress, green meaning recovery, blue meaning exercise. So we use heart rate variability as a window into the body to see what's happening sort of under the surface. We know that heart rate variability is mediated by the autonomic nervous system, the unconscious part of the nervous system, and also that heart rate and heart rate variability are affected by many different factors. For example, age and genetics play a big role, and I'll show an example of that. Physical fitness plays a role. So in general, people in better fitness are going to have a higher heart rate variability, or as you are improving your fitness, typically your heart rate variability would be increasing. Whereas acute physical activity increases your heart rate and decreases your heart rate variability. So that's normal in that acute situation when you're exercising. Various hormonal reactions, metabolism, cognitive processes, and emotions all play a role in our heart rate and heart rate variability. So by measuring that, we can start getting an idea of what's happening. And also different kind of stress reactions and recovery obviously play a role. And that's one of the center or the core parts of the Firstbeat assessment. In general, we can say that high heart rate variability is a sign of a healthy heart, whereas low values can indicate some kind of internal or external acute or chronic stress, or for example, weak recovery or some kind of illness. This shows a little bit more detail about the analytics process. So basically we combined physiological knowledge and information with mathematical models to form a digital model of each individual's physiological status and functions. For that, we need high quality data from multiple days so that we can establish each person's baseline. And then we start with the heart rate variability data gathered with a reliable measurement device. And then we go through a data processing step. Advanced signal processing, various calibrations and error correction algorithms take place in the data processing part. And then after that, we can start forming that physiological model for the person. We can estimate from that data, for example, respiration, oxygen uptake, different autonomic regulation parts. And the next step is then to find out what's happening in the body, so-called body state, stress or recovery or exercise. Personalized diagnostic of what's happening, and then connecting that body state to the context. The client is keeping a journal, so then they can make sense of the different colors by looking at the context, what's happening in their life, getting personalized feedback and learning individualized insights about the data. That's sort of the core of the whole process leads to that personalized feedback step. And then you get various different indexes and values in the Firstbeat result that you get after the measurement. The relationship between heart rate and heart rate variability is opposite. So when heart rate decreases, heart rate variability increases. That's natural. So that, for example, when we are exercising here about 9 p.m., the heart rate climbs to a higher level when the person is exercising. And at that time, the heart rate variability is very low. Whereas during rest, it's just the opposite. You can see the heart rate dropping to a low level during sleep period here. That's indicated by the green color. They're recovering, and heart rate variability is at the highest level for that person during nighttime. In general, heart rate variability increases during rest and relaxation, some kind of relaxing activities when there is not a lot of activity going on, and decreases when there is some kind of load, whether it's a physical load or a mental load. So it can be stress, a stressful situation, or, for example, some kind of physical activity. And then based on the context and the additional information that we can get from the heart rate variability data, for example, the movement data and respiration, it helps us differentiate, for example, what's a mentally stressful situation indicated by the red color here in the afternoon versus a physically stressful situation where the person is clearly moving and the things like respiration and oxygen uptake are increasing as well. Heart rate alone does not reveal overload or overtraining, for example, and that's where heart rate variability is a valuable additional information. We utilize them both, but heart rate variability really goes into more detail and looks more deeply what's happening in the body. Various stress factors, such as sort of traditional stress, lack of sleep, illnesses, drugs, alcohol, poor physical fitness, overweight, they all have a generally decreasing effect on heart rate variability. Excessive physical training can also lead to overtraining and reduced heart rate variability. And that's what this example here illustrates, just to highlight the idea that heart rate alone does not always show that something is not going well. This is an example of an athlete before the overtraining situation where they were in a very good training status, training hard, but in a balanced way. Their average heart rate during a 5-minute resting measurement, which is the RR intervals here, their heart rate was 48 beats per minute, and the average heart rate variability was 82 milliseconds. The variation is great and healthy, indicating good recovery, good training status, and good health. Then this athlete was training really, really hard and turned out excessively hard, too much, too many workouts, too high intensity. And a couple of months later, when they did the same 5-minute resting test, their average heart rate is still about the same. So the heart rate level has not yet reacted, but heart rate variability had dropped dramatically. It's only 12 milliseconds, which for a young athlete, it's a pathologically low value. You can see that there's essentially no variation in here. That's a clear sign of some kind of imbalance. Overload, overtraining, recovery is not occurring. And that can be a red flag for an athlete, but that we utilize that same principle in the Firstbeat measurements that are done for normal people to try to highlight situations where the load is for some reason too high. Factors affecting heart rate variability, highlighting the importance of genetics or inheritance. You can see about a third of the overall heart rate variability level is influenced by genetics. That's what we are born with, some kind of a level that's typical to each of us. And obviously we can't affect that. And that some people will have to sort of accept that their heart rate variability might be fairly low, but then they can still, by doing the right things, they can improve their own individual level. But then other factors that we can all have more control over, such as stress, our health situation, our physical fitness situation, we can influence those. And by doing right things, we can increase our heart rate variability, which is a sign of good health. This just shows the significant and powerful effect that age has on heart rate variability, and we take that into account. So when we show the quality of recovery, the millisecond value of heart rate variability during sleep period, for example, with the reference values for that are taken into account so that you are always compared to your own age group. There is a significant reduction in heart rate variability as we get older. All the lines are dropping. Here is the age from 25 up to 65, and it's categorized into good or moderate or poor level in comparison to your own age group, but clear declining trend as we get older. In the background of heart rate variability is the autonomic nervous system, like I mentioned before, and its two branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic side. Sympathetic nervous system is sort of the gas of the body. It speeds up bodily functions, elevates the body's activation level, heart rate and respiration are elevated and heart rate variability is low. This is a normal part of life. It helps us perform and get things done. But then parasympathetic side is the calming down system. It calms down various bodily functions such as heart rate and respiration. Heart rate variability increases and it allows the body to recover and, for example, to get restorative sleep. And these two sides should work in constant cooperation and sort of in sync. So they're both very normal. We need them both. But in a balanced, healthy situation, we should be able to switch off from the red, from the sympathetic dominance to recovery when it's meaningful, when we go to sleep, when we take a rest, when we have a relaxing moment. If the balance is not there, then we can get stuck in this red sympathetic nervous system dominance, which is very consuming on the body because constantly the activation level is high. So we're always aiming for a meaningful balance between the two sides, between the gas and the brake of the body. Here is an illustration of what the different colors on the Firstbeat result mean. Typically, there is red and blue, light blue and bright blue and green colors there. Red color means stress reaction. It's that state where the sympathetic nervous system activation is dominant. It can be positive or negative, and that's a key thing to understand, that the red color is not a bad thing, but it just means that the activation is elevated for some reason. Heart rate is elevated, respiration frequency is elevated, and heart rate variability is low compared to that person's baseline. And recovery means calming down of the body, and that's when the parasympathetic nervous system is dominant. Heart rate is lower, respiration rate low, and heart rate variability is high, again compared to that individual's baseline. Physical activity means physical load during which energy expenditure is significantly increased from the resting level. It can be light blue or bright blue. Light blue meaning light physical activity where the intensity is between 20 and 40% of the maximal performance for that individual. Whereas the bright blue means moderate or vigorous physical activity where the intensity is going to be higher. And we utilize the movement data also to differentiate between red, the mentally stressful situation, and for example, light blue, the light physical activity. So when there is elevated heart rate, elevated respiration, and clear signs of movement, it's going to be identified as light physical activity. Whereas a mentally stressful situation, for example, looking here around 11 o'clock, that might be, for example, a person giving a speech. They might be standing still, but their heart rate is going to be higher. The stress level is high because it's causing a stress reaction in their body. Most of the time you also see some white areas in the graph where none of the previous states can be identified. Most typically that happens when the device is off. So for example, when you take the device off to take a shower or a bath, but also recovery from exercise. So for example, here after the blue bar around 8 to 9 p.m., there is some segment after the exercise when the body is still recovering from the effort of exercise. It's not a mentally stressful situation necessarily, but it's still not exercise. So the white color means that it's not clearly identified as either. There can also be some short awakenings or segments during sleep, maybe restless periods that can't be clearly identified as red or green. And so then that might be a little bit of white. And it's normal to have some of those segments in the graph as well. Lots of different kind of causes of stress and stress reactions. They can be physical, internal or external physical stressors, psychological stressors, or social stressors. And the main idea is just to appreciate and understand how many different kind of things affect our body instead of making too oversimplified or dramatic conclusions of the result from the measurement. So the sort of, for example, the explanation behind the red color, it can be so many different things. And in discussing with the client, it's good to take this into consideration. Try to find out what was happening in their life. What kind of days were they? Was there something specific happening? For example, a heat wave during the measurement can clearly cause some elevated stress levels without the person necessarily having any kind of so-called traditional stress in their lives. Illnesses, some kind of negative emotions or anxiety, of course, some kind of overload, heavy workload, using alcohol. So these kind of things we sort of investigate and discuss with the client to try to understand the factors behind the result and then make meaningful conclusions from that. The result does not differentiate between positive and negative stress, like I mentioned before, and it is really good to understand this and also that for the client to understand that. And that's where the journal really helps. If they keep a journal and they mark what they were doing during the day, they get a lot more insights and information from the graph. So instead of just seeing the red color and wondering why it looks so stressful, they can see, for example, that, oh yeah, that's when we had that really excellent meeting where we were really brainstorming and creating and making new things, and maybe that was a natural example of a positive stress reaction. Could also be an evening at a theater or a concert, for example. It can cause some emotional response and excitement. It can elevate the activation level, but in a very normal way, and most likely can result in a good restorative sleep afterwards because it was positive. In general, we say that positive stress does not prevent recovery during sleep, whereas negative excessive stress tends to keep the body wired and activated even when we try to rest. This is the basics of the physiological background. So thank you very much. And if you want to read more, do visit the science section on our website and you can find some white papers and more background over there. Thank you very much. Bye bye.